To be honest with you, like so much.
You like to talk, I can tell a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
400 when she was young. She'd crank out about 400 words a minute, gusts up to 600. That little thing can yak, man.
You're a talker, so I'm letting you talk.
I need to use the restroom.
Let me show you where it's at.
Can you
So,
give me some water while you're out there with them, please? Thank you.
Another bottle?
Yeah, at least one.
Let's move to
Sunday.
Sunday. Well, let me reverse something.
All right, and just two quick notes here. If you are interviewing someone, especially someone who's cooperating like Nichol here, you should never shame them for talking. The entire point of getting Nichol there is to have her talk. And what does Kobach do? He makes little underhanded remarks about how much she talks. The last thing I would want to do is make her conscious about talking. Right? I don't want her to be self-conscious about it. I want her to speak freely. If anything, I'd say, how about you tell me more? Open up a little bit with me. Right? Let's just get crazy here. Let's just talk. He's doing the exact opposite of what he should be doing. Did Nichol Kessinger get away with murder or at least being an accessory? Or was she just another of Chris Watts' victims? I'm Deception Detective. I'm an attorney trained in statement analysis, and this channel exists to expose lies and manipulation. In today's video, we'll analyze Nichol Kessinger's interview with Agent Kobach to determine if she had guilty knowledge. This is the fourth video in my Nichol Kessinger series. Previously, we've seen her dodge questions about how she and Chris communicated, what she knew about Shannan's pregnancy, and what she and Chris discussed at the Lazy Dog mere days before the murders. I also highlighted the mistakes Agent Kobach made, which allowed her to get away with all that. So we'll pick up where we left off in part 3, which is a pivotal part of the interview. This is the second biggest mistake Kobach made in this interview, so if you haven't seen part 3 yet, listen closely to see if you can catch it. For everyone else, this is even crazier the second time around. Without further ado, let's listen.
Saturday, during your dinner, what kind of conversation did you guys have?
I don't even remember. So he's been trying to eat a little healthier than he normally does, and he's always been in the working out since I knew him, and he tries to eat clean, but he was trying to step it up a little bit, and nothing like the people who do the competitions and the shows that are all super restrictive. I mean, it was nothing like that. It's just day-to-day general maintenance, but it's how I eat, and it's pretty healthy. And he's been losing a lot of weight. He lost, I want to say 13 pounds in the time that we were hanging out. And honestly, when you start eating a little bit cleaner and you start working out a little bit harder, the first couple months, especially for a man, because they lose.
So if you haven't noticed it yet, Agent Kobach's question was, what was the conversation like at the Lazy Dog between you and Chris? Has Nichol answered that question? Not in the least. She's talking about how they're losing weight, and even now at this point, she's giving Kobach advice about how guys tend to lose weight and how it's tougher at the start. She hasn't said this is at all what they talked about. And even if it is what they spoke about, it was not the content of the entire 90 minutes of their sit-down dinner. The fact that Nichol is going on this tangent and can't even bring herself to say this is what we talked about should be a giant red flag to Kobach that he needs to let her finish responding and then bring her back on track. That's great you talked about macronutrients and losing weight. I'm happy to hear it. What else did you talk about? But he doesn't do that, so keep listening.
Lose weight faster. It's not something that's that drastic to me, but it did stand out that it was a little much, and so I was whoa, maybe you're not eating enough macronutrients, so let me look at them. So he had been working on his MyFitnessPal app and programming all the stuff he eats, and I just started going through them, and I was trying to figure out where his ratios were, and we actually spent a lot of time doing that because he'd asked me to do it for him, because I just was at the point where I was if his weight loss slows down in a few weeks, he'll be fine. And if it doesn't, then his macros are a little off. It's not like that big of a deal, like in the workout community. This is like a very normal thing. But
Did you have any other outside concerns, like potential drug use, alcohol use, any of that stuff that...
All right, so this is where we wrapped up part 3 in the series. And it was because I wanted to really emphasize this point, the big mistake that Kobach made here. He asked her what they talked about at dinner. She gave an evasive, distracting response, and it actually worked. So Kobach actually got distracted by Nichole's response. She went on a tangent about losing weight and how Chris is losing weight. And instead of marking down his question for later about whether or not she was concerned about how quickly he was losing weight, he asked it right then and there. So he effectively got distracted about finding out what they spoke about at the Lazy Dog like a day or two before the murders. Based on the comments I've seen, people say it was right before the murders happened, which is why this conversation is so important. Also in the DD forum at forum.deceptiondeck.com, I put some extra thoughts I had after part 3, and I actually cataloged some of the errors in Kobach's questions that I pointed out in part 3. So besides him asking questions but not waiting for the answers like he did there, where he said, "What do you talk about the Lazy Dog?" but never actually got the response, he also asked leading questions in the negative, where he says things like, "You weren't aware Shannan was pregnant, right?" And he also asked questions that wouldn't clarify the situation even if Nichol answered them truthfully. Like his question in part 3 that we saw where he asked, "Well, earlier you told me you didn't know Shannan was pregnant, right?" Even if she said yes or no, that doesn't tell us what she actually knew. It only confirms whether or not she said something to him out in the hallway before the interview.
that led you to go, oh, he's lost an extreme amount of weight in such a short period of time?
No, and I wouldn't call it extreme. It was just like, it was a lot. But I mean, when I first started working out, I dropped like 12 pounds in 2 weeks when I first started like hitting it hard with the diet. So the fact that he lost like that much weight, it wasn't, like I said, it was not a surprising amount. I just didn't want it to be like a sustained amount. But no, I didn't think anything weird of it just because of like how interknitted I am with the like workout community, and I know like this is possible. But it just, the thing that concerned me about it, I guess, and it wasn't even concerned, but the thing that like kind of red lighted me like, hey, this might be carrying on, is the fact that his macros were like pretty dialed in. Like I had wrote them and he like didn't stay exactly on them, but his calorie intake was about where it needed to be, my experience anyways, for like what he was trying to achieve. And so I don't know, he didn't seem to have a problem with it.
Remember, all this stemmed from trying to find out what they talked about at a secret rendezvous at a sports bar a day or two before Chris murdered his entire family. Instead of finding out what they spoke about, we're being told about his macros and his diet plan. And Kobach, unfortunately, seems to be totally distracted by this. So what you should do if you're in his situation, let's say you're interviewing an employee, or I know I have lots of psychologists, I also have lots of law enforcement who subscribe to my channel, who are members of the channel, who participate in the DD forum. What should you do? Well, you should notate that, right? So he has a big notebook in front of him. He should be using it. So you should note down, Nichol mentioned that Chris is losing a lot of weight. Drugs, question mark, alcohol, question mark, depression, question mark. And what you do is you follow up on that later. We are on the track right now of trying to find out what they talked about at the Lazy Dog. But Nichol has effectively distracted Kobach from that, and now we're off on another topic. So while that topic might lead somewhere, it could also be a rabbit hole. You need to note it and come back to it later once you've exhausted everything they talked about at the Lazy Dog. This is, like I said in part 3, a rookie interviewing faux pas. And in my comments of my previous videos, people have told me that Kobach is so bad at interviewing that maybe he has some ulterior motive. And I'll give you my thoughts about that, as well as my thoughts about Nichol praising Shannan's mothering in part 3, and my thoughts about Dwayne Kessinger, Nichole's dad, being in the room. I have some counterintuitive thoughts about those things, so we'll go over those in a little bit. But right now, let's just see if Kobach ever follows up on what they talked about at the Lazy Dog besides macronutrients.
He liked where he was at with all of that.
So that was your main conversation Saturday?
That was like a big chunk while we were there, is like us actually going through, because I was like going through each item, like, why are your ratios off?
All right. So here Kobach has said, so that was the main topic of your conversation at Lazy Dog. Nichol never said that. And this is another mistake he constantly makes in this interview, is he feeds her words. He puts words into her mouth. If you were to rewind this video back to the beginning and listen to Nichole's answer, she never once said, this is what we discussed. He said, what was the conversation like? And then she goes into some general facts about Chris, that he was trying to lose weight and that he had a macro app. And at some point in time, she helped put in his macros into macro factors so he could lose weight. But she never actually said that was a topic of discussion at that dinner. She implied it by going off on this tangent in response to that question, but she never actually said it. And that is how most manipulators and deceivers will trick you. They will respond to your question, but it's not an actual literal response, right? It's a tangent. The other mistake Kobach made was Nichol never said this was the majority of their conversation. So even if there's a kernel of truth in her reply that they were talking about macronutrients, it might have just been when they sat down and looked at the menu and she said, hey, the guacamole cup has a lot of fat. Maybe you should avoid that. Okay, what did you talk about for the rest of the dinner? She never said that it was even the topic of their conversation, nor did she say it was the majority. But listen to what Kobach says here. He completely feeds words into her mouth.
Main conversation Saturday.
What he was trying to achieve. And so, I don't know, he didn't seem to have a problem with it. He liked where he was at with all of that.
So that was your main conversation Saturday?
That was like a big chunk.
That was your main conversation. He said that, not Nichol. The other thing to note here is, even if it was the main topic of conversation, by saying it was the main topic of conversation means they spoke about something else. And that's what I'm curious about. For 4 videos now, I've been trying to determine what Nichole's involvement was in the murders, whether she helped Chris plan it, whether she participated in it, whether she helped him cover it up. Personally, I'm still of the belief that she was not involved at all. But that belief is just based off statistics. It's not based off anything Kobach has uncovered. He hasn't given us any information one way or the other. The reason I'm on the fence about her involvement is because she doesn't answer like someone who actually participated in the murders, if you've seen parts 1 and 2.
Chunk while we were there is like us actually going through, because I was like going through each item, like, why are your ratios off?
You know where his kids or wife were that night?
On Saturday?
Yeah, his kids. Well, you know his kids are with the babysitter. Do you know where his wife is?
She's in Arizona.
Okay. How do you know that?
Because he told me.
Okay. Do you know what she's doing there?
I think she's on a business trip. He didn't even tell me right away. He actually told me, I think, like on Saturday or something. It might have been like Friday or something. I honestly don't remember. I just remember I was like really surprised where he's like, hey, like, I'm going to try to get a babysitter if you want to hang out or something like that. And I was like, why do you need a babysitter? Like, your wife's home. He's like, no, she's out of town. I was like, oh.
Okay. Is there much conversation regarding that, her on being on a trip, or the children during those conversations?
Not really. I just asked him what time she was coming home on Sunday, and he just said really late.
Okay.
And that was it. I mean, there's nothing really to talk about with that.
Okay.
All right. So Kobach is making another mistake, and this is one he's been making, I think, the entire interview, but I haven't pointed it out yet. So I'm going to read you a rule from the deception deck, and then you tell me if you can recognize the problem with Agent Kobach's questions as it pertains to this rule. So if you're not familiar, the deception deck is my 52 favorite rules for spotting lies and deception. Here's the rule I'm going to read to you now. Think about this rule and recall Agent Kobach's questions. Liars often fluctuate between past and present tense, reflecting a shift from recalling the actual memories in the past tense to fabricating details in the present tense. If a statement suddenly switches to present tense, it might be a fabrication. So listen to Kobach's questions here and ask yourself, how does this taint Nichole's responses and make it harder for us to determine if she's lying?
That night?
On Saturday?
Yeah, his kid. Well, you know his kids are with the babysitter. Do you know where his wife is?
She's in Arizona.
Okay. How do you know that?
Because he told me.
Okay. Do you know what she's doing there?
I think she's on a business trip. He didn't even tell me right away. He actually told me, I think, like on Saturday or something. It might have been like Friday or something. I honestly don't remember. I just remember I was like really surprised where he's like, hey, like, I'm going to try to get a babysitter if you want to hang out or something like that. And I was like, why do you need a babysitter? Like, your wife's home. He's like, no, she's out of town. I was like, oh, okay.
Is there much conversation regarding that, her on being on a trip, or the children on during those conversations?
Is there much conversation? Do you know this? Do you know that? He's asking these questions in the present tense. So if Nichol answers in the present, it could just be that she's responding to him in the present tense because he's primed her to speak that way. In other words, it makes it harder for me to tell if she's fluctuating between her tenses because she's fabricating a detail. Like you've seen me do on my Amber Heard videos. Or is she fluctuating between past and present tense because that's how he's posing the questions to her? In other words, lots of the things Agent Kobach does makes our ability to determine the veracity of Nichole's statements virtually impossible.
not really. I just asked him what time she was coming home on Sunday, and he just said really late.
Okay.
And that was it. I mean, there's nothing really to talk about with that.
Okay. So your conversation's mainly health related.
Mm-hmm.
You guys return to your house, and then he goes home, and then you talk to him for a few hours on Sunday.
Did I? Are you asking me, or are you
I'm
telling
asking
me?
you.
Oh, I was like, I don't even know. Someday, honestly. So wait a minute. That was Saturday. We're talking about Saturday. We're not talking about Sunday right now.
Okay, so you're still on Saturday.
Yes.
You guys have a phone conversation when he gets home?
That was the day that he got the babysitter and I went out to dinner, not Sunday.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. I just want to make sure
That's
you
okay.
got your
Yep.
days right. So Saturday, yes, we went out. He had the babysitter. He went home. I'm sure we did. We always talk on the phone. And honestly, I mean, Mark asked me that the other day. He's like, how long are you on the phone? 15 minutes, 20 minutes? Like, you're going to have to look at the records.
So even when it seems like he might have a gotcha question, like, so you talked on the phone for 2 hours, right? Where he asks a loaded question in the affirmative, which we haven't seen him do. He quickly backtracks, right? So even when it seems like he's bluffing, she calls him out. Well, are you asking me or telling me that you need to go check that? So overall, his technique is very poor. So I'll just address this here. In my previous video, there were a lot of comments also in the forum, in the live chat. I premiere every video, and I am in the live chat during the premiere. So if you haven't joined the live chat yet, please do come join us. It's open to members and non-members. But lots of people were speculating that Agent Kobach is simply just resigned to the fact that they have Chris dead to rights. So my personal opinion was maybe they think that we need to preserve Nichol as a witness, so we shouldn't attack her or discredit her in case we need her to testify against Chris. But other people, had other speculations, like maybe he was wooed by Nichol because she's so charming, or that he's corrupt, or that the dad has some sort of pull over him. So here's my thoughts on that. so far into this analysis, and I put this into the forum 2 days ago. All right, so Agent Kobach's interview approach was so weak that some commenters speculated what his true intentions were. In cases where bad intentions aren't obvious, I lean on Hanlon's razor. And this is a good rule of thumb, right? Hanlon's razor is never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. So if someone could just be stupid, it's better to to lean that way than to lean on them doing it deliberately because they're malicious or they're evil or they're corrupt. Throughout my Nichol Kessinger series, it's clear that Kobach might just lack proper interrogation skills. And then I went over the errors he made. All right, and I'll just address this here as well before we move on. I saw lots of comments, people saying, was Dwayne Kessinger, Nicole's dad, running the show? I thought about that. I never thought that he was, but I think that the people who think he is running the show likely just have the causality reversed. So here's what I said. It seems many agree that Agent Kobach didn't impress Nicole hard enough, and some have suggested it might be because Nicole's dad, Dwayne Kessinger, was present. Though Dwayne did interrupt occasionally, I believe it's actually the other way around. Kobach wasn't lenient because Dwayne was there. Rather, Dwayne was there because Kobach was lenient. In other words, Kobach is likely a pushover, and that's why Dwayne is there. If Kobach wasn't a pushover, Dwayne probably wouldn't be there in the first place. He would have found some way to dissuade Dwayne from sitting in on the interview. That's my thoughts so far. Let me know in the comments if you agree. And obviously, my thoughts are able to develop as we continue analyzing. Nothing's set in stone.
To be honest with you, like so much.
You like to talk, I can tell a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
400 when she was young. She'd crank out about 400 words a minute, gusts up to 600. That little thing can yak, man.
You're a talker, so I'm letting you talk.
I need to use the restroom.
Let me show you where it's at.
Can you
So,
give me some water while you're out there with
Sure.
them, please? Thank you.
Another bottle.
Yeah, at least one.
Let's move to
Sunday.
Sunday. Well, let me reverse something.
All right, and just two quick notes here. If you are interviewing someone, especially someone who's cooperating like Nicole here, you should never shame them for talking. The entire point of getting Nicole there is to have her talk. And what does Kobach do? He makes little underhanded remarks about how much she talks. The last thing I would want to do is make her conscious about talking. Right? I don't want her to be self-conscious about it. I want her to speak freely. If anything, I'd say, how about you tell me more? Open up a little bit with me. Right? Let's just get crazy here. Let's just talk. He's doing the exact opposite of what he should be doing. Also, I'll just quickly note this. In part 1, when they brought up the phone records, Nicole started doing something that manipulators often do, which is playing the victim and trying to build some sympathy and distract. And she said, well, I'm really hungry, right? Right before the phone stuff came up, which indicated to me that she was sensitive about the phone records. And if you haven't seen my analysis of that, the video is titled How to Interrogate a Suspect. And she said things along the lines of, I'm really hungry. I just woke up. I've got a headache, even though this was an hour into the interview. And she only started doing that right when the phone was mentioned. And I think what they did was they went out and they got her this bag of chips. It's been about half an hour. She hasn't touched that bag of chips. Now, maybe she forgot she was hungry. Maybe she lost her appetite. Or this could just be a little bit more confirmation that what she was doing there when she was talking about being hungry and having a headache was, as I suspected, a manipulation tactic. A little way to build some sympathy or to delay the interview so she could think about how she was going to address the topic of searching her phone. So I'll just point that out here, since the last time they all left the room was to get chips. Those chips are still there, untouched.
Your conversation with the children, or about the children, was there ever talk about medical concerns with either of the children?
Well, I know Cece is allergic to not peanuts, like pine nuts. time that.
So she has a nut allergy.
Yes.
Did they take meds?
Yeah, I know that she had like an EpiPen, but as far as I know, she didn't have any meds, but I never asked. Like, I was just told, like, she has a pretty severe allergy. And
Enough to carry an EpiPen, that's pretty severe.
yeah, while we're on this, so when he was in North Carolina, this is all like hearsay now because it's like, this is not a conversation. Like, he's telling me this stuff, but who knows exactly what happened. But he went out there to go see his family and her family. And while he was in town, before he went out to North Carolina, I guess his mother had accidentally, like, not exposed her to something with nuts, but had, like, given a product, I think it was like ice cream, to a different kid that could have traces of nuts or something. I don't know. But it was like, his daughter was fine, but she was, like, in the range of contamination. And I think his wife was very upset about that. And when he got to North Carolina, he told me that he was supposed to spend like half the time with them, half the time with her family, and that was supposed to be what it was. I don't know. But he said that he went to go see his family and they weren't answering the phone for like a day or two before he went out there. And then when he got there, there was a note on the door that said, son, if you step by, we're at the beach. And they ignored him for like most of the time that he was out there. And
his own family?
Yes. His mom, his dad, and his sister.
What's the significance? Do you know why?
Yeah, he said, and again, I don't know what is true with this man anymore and what's not, but he told me that, like, leading up to it, I was like, well, why are your folks, like, ignoring you? And I was, like, really concerned about this. Like, every single day he would talk to me when he was out there, and I was like, you talked to your family today? You talked to your family today?
I'm just going to note here how she referred to Chris as this man. Remember, as I pointed out in part 3, this indicates closeness, that indicates distance. So even here where she knows that he killed his whole family, or I think she knows at least that he killed Shannan. Actually, I think she knows at this point he killed his entire family. She still calls him this man, right? So she still reveals to us through her words that she feels some sort of connection to Chris still, despite the gruesome stuff he's done. Which is interesting. Does it mean that she is happy he did it, or she helped him plan it, or she still feels close to him because she knew it was coming and she expected it? At this point, I don't think so, but it is possible. Like I said in part 1, because she deleted all of her text messages with him, and because we've seen signs that she's deceptive about how they communicated, about what she knew about Shannan, about what they talked about the lazy dog, she has forfeited her right to the benefit of the doubt with me, at least.
Today, did you talk to your dad? What happened? Did you talk to him? No, I didn't. Or, yeah, I talked to my mom. Well, what'd she say? Are you going to hang out with him? Like, I wanted him to see his people because it's important. Family is an important thing. You know, it just needs to function properly. And,
sure.
And so I was like, well, and he was like, well, they're ignoring me. And I was like, what do you think happened? And he's like, I'm not really sure, but I think something was said between my wife and them during that incident. And he's like, because every time that happened nuts. Before he got there, yes. And he's like, because every time that I try to I talk about possibly going over there to see if they're home, she gets upset about it. And I was like, okay. And he told me that his mom and his wife did not get along at all. He said that his mom didn't even show up to his wedding because she's like really did not care for Shannan. Okay. So again, I don't know.
All right, so this is another point that was raised in part 3, and I think it's insightful into Nichole's thinking, into how she manipulates people, into how she strategizes and plants the seeds she needs to plant in order to manipulate people and get them to do things. In my last video, in part 3 of this series, How to Fool the Police, Nichol made a comment along the lines of, I've never bashed Shannan as a mom. And lots of commenters and people in the live chat said, she's lying. She definitely bashed Shannan as a mother. And they pointed to all the other places where Nichol has bashed Shannan. And we even see here, she's bashing Shannan again, right? So Chris's mom didn't like her. She didn't go to the wedding because Shannan's such an unlikable person. However, I personally have a counterintuitive thought about that. And here's my thought I posted in the DD forum. Many commenters were skeptical when Nichol claimed she had never bashed Shannan's parenting. However, I believe she was genuine, despite her past critical remarks about Shannan's job, spending habits, attitude, likability. Nichol was open about all those other criticisms, so why lie about this one? Nichol was not interested in being a stepmother, so maintaining a positive view of Shannan as a mother makes sense. It would ensure that Chris felt comfortable leaving his daughters with Shannan, especially when they began living together. In other words, Nichol probably planned which aspects of Shannan she was going to criticize and which she was going to try to build up in Chris's head in order to make her future plans as close to ideal for her as possible. She didn't want to bash Shannan as a mother because she wanted Shannan to continue mothering the children. That way she and Chris could go live on their own without her having to be a stepmother to the children. In other words, it looks like she is a very good forward-thinking manipulator. Now, is she manipulative enough to plan a murder or to coerce a man into murdering his entire family and to be with her? That's yet to be determined. But this is a good insight into how forward-thinking she is. She was able to turn him against Shannan, or at least play up the things he didn't like about Shannan, while still deliberately not bashing certain aspects of her that favor what she wants in the end. So I hope that makes sense. Also, if you disagree with me or agree with me and have other examples of her carving out exceptions for when she bashed Shannan that would contribute to the conversation, please do drop them here in the DD forum. I make a topic in the forum for each new podcast that's released, specifically so we can speak freely without any restrictions over there. All right, let's keep listening.
I don't know what's true and what's not, but I just know that there was like some tension there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like that part is like, I feel like it's almost third party, so that's why it's
Sure.
like I didn't even.
Well, but it came from him to you, so it's not. It is something that is, whether it's important or not, we can validate that. I'm sure we will be having some conversations with family. What does it mean? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I just know.
So
like,
maybe she, I don't know.
well, and then he ended up seeing them on the last like full day that he was there, and they told him supposedly that she had gotten really upset and had screamed and yelled in front of Chris's sister's kids that are very young, and to his mom and to his dad, and said like, "You're never going to see Chris again. You're never going to see me. You're never going to see the babies," and just like threatened them, and then like walked off. And I guess that was the incident that happened prior to him coming out there, and then she didn't tell him about it.
Mm-hmm.
She just like let it go, and then he just spent all week trying to figure out why his family was like not trying to be involved.
Gotcha.
So again, I'm not sure. That was like it just feels really third party, so it's hard for me to like talk about because
Sure.
like, I don't know how
That's
much validation.
So
there is and all that.
beyond the nut allergy for CC, did you know of any other? Did she take meds that you know of other than carrying an EpiPen?
His kids or his wife?
No, his children.
No.
And now, well, if you know anything about his wife's medical conditions, if she had any.
No, I've like read in the newspaper they keep saying, "Oh, she had medical conditions," and I'm like, is that a misprint? Are they talking about CC, or is that just something else I don't know?
So you don't know anything about
Nope.
Shannan having any kind of medical problems?
No.
Okay. Covered Saturday. So there's a phone call Saturday night, actually, from, no, it can't be Saturday, it had to be Sunday.
At this point, you should be able to catch the errors Kobach makes with his questions. All right, so I've cataloged them. I've pointed them out individually. You should be able to pick up on them now, right? So the whole point of these videos is to help expose lies and manipulation. but also fortify my audience, you guys, to be able to catch it yourselves and to avoid mistakes in attaining the truth yourselves, which is why these interview technique videos are also so useful. So when you ask a question, a leading question in the negative, it is easy for someone who's telling the truth to reply in the negative, and just as easy for someone who's lying to parrot back the no or the never in your question itself. In other words, it makes it hard when you review the responses to determine if someone was telling the truth or if they were lying. And in fact, I have a card in the deck all about interviewing non-cooperative subjects with 4 techniques to make it harder for a liar to lie to you. So if you want me to read that card out, please let me know and I'll read it in the next part of this series. Just comment uncooperative subjects below.
I wrote that down quickly. Sunday night. Is there anything else you think? Let me just back up from the Saturday where you guys had a meal at the Lazy Dog to prior for the 6 weeks that you guys were serious. And although your dad's here and I think you're probably pretty comfortable, your relationship with Chris was, can you describe your relationship?
I mean, when he was with me, I considered it.
So this is reason enough not to have the dad in the room, and could even be explained to the father. You know, hey, Dwayne, I know you have every right to be in the room and Nicole's cooperating with us. However, because of the nature of her relationship with Chris, Nicole might feel uncomfortable discussing the intimate details of her relationship with Chris in front of you because you're her dad. So if you don't mind, could you, just please wait outside the room while we conduct the first part of this interview, and then we can call you in once we're past that. Sounds reasonable enough. Maybe Dwayne would accept it, maybe not. I don't know the history of what happened outside of this video. So like I've said before, if they were already acting very skittish and showed signs that they were ready to lawyer up, then I understand the fact that Kobach wouldn't push too hard against anything, because if he pushes them a little bit too hard, they might just scatter and lawyer up, and then he loses the ability to interview them easily, to have them cooperating with him. However, he does have them cooperating, and so far he hasn't seemed to capitalize on that at all. The questions he asks do nothing to tell us what Nicole actually knew. Even with something as simple as, did you know Shannan was pregnant last week or before this happened? Did you know Shannan was pregnant? He couldn't even ask her a question like that, right? The way he asked it was, earlier you told me you didn't know Shannan was pregnant, right? She can say yes, she can say no to that. All it confirms to us is that she said something to him out in the hallway earlier. She could have been lying, she could have been telling the truth. Then the other questions he asked were, did Chris ever tell you Shannan was pregnant? And she says no. Or did Chris ever indicate Shannan was pregnant? And she said no. I believe it. Of course, it's very likely Chris would not have told his mistress that his wife was pregnant. But what he failed to ask was, did you know Shannan was pregnant? Through research of your own, through browsing Facebook, through seeing something at his house when you visited. I've seen some comments where people said that there was a sonogram taped up to the fridge in the kitchen that she probably saw. So while he has them cooperating, he does not seem to be capitalizing on it at all.
It to be fairly healthy was open communication, and it was what I thought was honest, and it was very calm, it was respectful. We got along really well. He gave me my space when I needed it, I gave him his, and anytime he wanted to take care of it, anytime that his kids could be in his life for hours or days or whenever they were home, I made sure that I wasn't a presence in his life so that he could be the best dad that he needed to be.
All right, so this is a theme we see time and time again. ever since the first time I saw it. I've got all my chips on that I've got this correct. What she would do is force Chris into an ultimatum. You're either with your kids or you're with me. Every time she mentions the kids, sometimes she butters it up and says, well, I told him, like she did here, when he's with his children, I'm not going to be there so that he can be a great father and give them all the attention they deserve. But sometimes she lets it leak, like we saw in part 3, the tone she actually used when she gave Chris these ultimatums, where she said things like, well, nope, we're not hanging out because you're with your kids, so go hang out with your kids. That's how I think she actually said this. And it's a common tactic of manipulators. They can recite to you exactly what they said to someone. We've seen Jada Pinkett Smith do it. We've seen Amber Heard do it. We've seen Meghan Markle do it on the channel. They can tell you word for word what they actually said to someone, but they leave out the context of the tone in which they said it. Saying something like, I personally think you should spend time with your kids. Sounds reasonable enough. That's basically how Nichol presented it here. But add the tone, the belittling tone that manipulators use, and it completely changes. I believe, get your hands off me, I believe you should go spend time with your kids. Bye-bye. Hang up the phone or slam the door in his face. That seems to be how this actually happened in reality. Also, this is one of the reasons I believe Nichol when she says she didn't bash Shannan as a mother. She seems to have zero interest in the children. And it makes sense that she would carve out that one thing, right? She said herself, I didn't bash her as a mother. What does that imply? Well, she bashed Shannan about plenty, but she specifically remembers not bashing Shannan as a mother, probably because she wanted Shannan to have full or the majority of the custody over the children once Chris left, so he and Nichol could have as much alone time together as they needed. Which, by logical extension, if I'm right about all that, probably means she didn't expect Chris to kill his wife and children.
And I mean, I thought what we had, it was very comfortable for me. I enjoyed it. I think he did very much as well.
You guys, 6 to 8 weeks, 2 months, whatever it was, you guys have an intimate relationship during that time.
Yes.
Okay. So you're pretty serious. Did he ever tell you that he loved you?
Yes, he did.
Did you ever tell him the same?
A couple times.
Okay. Notwithstanding that today, because those thoughts may have changed for you, but on, let's go Sunday into Monday or Monday, did you still love him on those days?
I think it was something where it was like I said it a few times and I meant it, but he definitely felt the urge to say it to me a lot more than I did to him because it was just all very new to me, and it was like, take your time with this. Like, you don't need to like rush that, you know? Like, I remember when he was in North Carolina and he was like trying to patch things up with his wife and he told me he loved me, and I was like, don't say that to me. Like, please go try to fit. And I mean, and that might even be in the text too, where it's like, don't say those words to me and then go try to make.
Once again, this looks like her reciting her exact words, but leaving out the tone. I believe if she said, you're trying to patch things up with your wife and you're telling me you love me, don't tell me you love me. Ew. Right? Something along those lines. And let me know if you like my Nichol Kessinger impression.
Try to make peace with your wife and lay in bed with another woman. Like, just don't do that. And I was like, it's not that I don't appreciate what you're saying to me. It's like, it just didn't sit right for me, you know? So I just feel like...
Almost like an insecurity where he had to say that to you? Or?
I don't know. I think he like... looking back at all this now, I don't think he was trying to fix things with her. So saying, I love you, to me, seemed like probably something that he genuinely meant. Like, I love this woman. And regardless of where he was going to end up that night. But to me, in the way that I was perceiving things. He had told me that he was trying to fix things with her. So it's just like, this is an inappropriate time. And I wasn't mad at him. And I'm pretty sure that's in the text too, where it was very like calm, but it's just like, it's almost disrespectful, where it's like, please don't. I'm like, you know, if we get to that point where it is you and me, like, yes, you can say that, but don't, not then. Like, that's.
So once again, she reveals the true nature of the relationship when she says that she controlled the situation. So she says, for example, he was with his kids, so I told him he couldn't call me. He needed to take time with his kids, which implies that he wanted to call her. He wanted to have it both ways. He wanted to be with his kids and be able to call Nichol, but she set up the ultimatum. If you're with your kids, you can't call me. In other words, it wasn't mutual, where she's saying, well, we decided when he's with his kids, he shouldn't call me. And here again, I told him he couldn't say he loves me. So it wasn't mutual. Hey, when I'm with my wife, I'm trying to patch things up. You know, it might be awkward, but I can't say I love you because it would be a lie because I'm not totally decided on you. Or if she says, you know, just don't lie to me. Let's just see if you can save your marriage. And then we can tell each other we love each other if we're 100% certain. She's saying she told him he couldn't. So he was trying to say he loves her. And she said, no. If you're trying to work on your relationship with your wife and you're over on a vacation with her and I'm sitting here alone, don't tell me you love me.
So you thought he was very genuine when he said that?
Yeah, I did. I mean, and he wrote it. It's in all those cards I gave you. Not in all of them, but
Okay.
like the later ones.
And
Thank you.
when you said it to him, you said you meant it when you said it.
Yes, I just didn't say as frequently as he said it. Like, sometimes he would say it, and I was just like...
So Nichol said something interesting here. She talked about cards where Chris said he loves her. That's another form of communication. So she said he said it in all the cards I gave you. What about cards she didn't give them? Also, why were they writing things in physical cards? Like, could these just be benign love notes between each other with photos, and she only turned over some of them because the ones are explicit? Of course. But could it be that they really were saying some very nasty things about his family, his wife, his children, joking maybe about doing things to them, about getting rid of them, and they were paranoid enough not to put it into a phone. So they preferred to put it into writing or to get reassurances from each other, right? We're going to put this into writing so that we each have blackmail if we ever turn on each other. It's possible. All these things are still on the table. However, the way I'm betting, if I'm stacking up my chips, and remember, the analysis we do here, the deception detection we do here, is all about being right more often than you are wrong. So if someone changes their tenses or says a word that indicates deception, does it mean 100% of the time that they're lying? Of course not. But if you notice those indicators, you can start to stack your chips, like you're a poker player, stacking your chips, ready to go all in. And the idea of everything we do here, the deception detection techniques, including statement analysis, critical thinking, Bayesian statistical approach, are the razors, like I just showed you Hanlon's razor, or Occam's razor. We use them all so that when we do go all in on something, we're right more often than we are wrong. That's the whole thing. That's the whole point, is to not be tricked. So far, all my chips are stacked on Nichol being very manipulative, very unlikable, maybe joking with Chris about killing his family and doing terrible things to them. Maybe even jokingly planning something. But I don't think that she helped him literally plan and orchestrate the murder of his family, nor do I think she helped participate in it, nor do I think she helped him physically cover it up. But the fact that she deleted all of her messages with him might suggest that she could be an accessory after the fact. And those messages are gone, right? As far as I know, no one's ever seen those text messages, nor has her phone ever been searched, as far as I'm aware, for any other apps they might have used to communicate, which I think she's done a lot of work, especially in part 1 of my series, How to Interrogate a Subject. She's done a lot of linguistic work to get the detectives not to search for other forms of communication. If they were to reopen up an investigation into her tomorrow, I would say the first thing they should do is search for any apps she deleted off that phone within the 2 days before she came in for this interview. I'd be curious if she deleted something like Telegram or Signal or Skype or Instagram or LinkedIn or any other tool they could have used to communicate.
For me, it was still like very, very new, so I kind of like took him only step. I was just like, this is a really important moment.
So you got, I mean, in the short period of time that you guys were together, he
Yes.
became very attached to you.
Yes. Very,
I
very
mean, he's
attached.
sending cards,
Flowers.
he's telling you he loves you, he sends you flowers. Does he buy you any other gifts?
Nope. I wouldn't have wanted them anyways. Flowers is enough. You can't. I don't need expensive stuff.
Okay. But he becomes very attached to you.
Yes.
You guys are talking multiple times a day, at least. You're
All the time.
You're seeing each other on a regular basis.
Yep.
So it's a very and his wife is not around, nor are his children. So there's a lot of time for you guys to build your relationship in this first four weeks or so. Is that fair?
Yeah, and even when she was back, I mean, it was still like we were still spending time together. He was still spending time with his children, and I had my own life. Like, I mean, there was 1 week where I just like went out of town with my friends for my birthday. I wasn't even around the whole like last few days of June up until the 3rd of July. I was like gone, you know. And then there was another like last weekend. I had a friend impromptu come in town from out of state, and I hosted her for a few days. And it's like I still did my own thing all the time. Like, whether he was there or not, like, if my friends were like, hey, we want to make plans, I would tell him, like, we're not hanging out today because I want to go see my mom or my dad.
Did your friends know about him?
Nope.
Why?
Because it's like he's with 2 women right now. They don't need to know about
So
that.
if you had a boyfriend of 4 to 8 weeks on a regular... I don't know if you were married prior or if you had a boyfriend before, but if you had a steady boyfriend, you would have let people know. I think you told me before we got started that you just told your dad about Chris.
No, I wouldn't
recently.
have told them. I wouldn't have told
Okay.
people. It's too early. I mean, people...
So you don't tell your friends, hey, I got a boyfriend.
People come and go. I mean,
Okay.
dating scene these days is like, it sucks. I mean, so, no, I wouldn't. I mean, it would have to be something, even with Sean. I think I was with Sean for probably like 6 or 7 months before I brought him home to my family. I mean, I really, same with, that was the guy I was in a previous relationship with, but I mean...
But this one, you were a little bit more, you said he's with 2 women. Was that one of your considerations for not telling anybody about him?
Yes, well, I mean, it was like, okay, like this...
As part of this series, I think we should analyze Chris's confession to see if we believe it. So he apparently said he did everything on his own, that Nichol wasn't involved. Is that credible? Is he covering for her? The other thing is, if this guy Sean has ever done any interviews, I'd be curious to know what he says about what it's like to actually be in a relationship with Nichol. If she's as manipulative and controlling as she seems to be in this interview. Maybe one of the YouTubers who's really deep into this case, like Zawoki or Watts the Obsession, who react to my Nichol Kessinger videos, can let me know if that video even exists, if Sean has done any interviews. So we're coming up on an hour now, so I'll wrap up here. If you want me to continue looking into this case, let's get this video to 50,000 views. On your screen right now is a video I recommend you watch next, as well as my playlist about Nichol Kessinger if you want to dive deeper. Until next time, stay tuned.